Hi, my name is Henry Perez. I'm currently a rising senior here at Case Western, majoring in chemical engineering.
And I'm Tyler McFarren. I am a senior here at Case. Also, both of us are peer advisors, and I'm studying civil engineering.
We're sitting here with the Dean of Engineering, Dean Ragu, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I know that I had a nice conversation with the peer advisors a little while ago, and it was very enjoyable. And I'm hoping this is equally enjoyable, and I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, we appreciated meeting with you. We have some questions. Some of them are actually from the students. If you don't mind, we enjoy
Oh, of
asking
course
some
not.
of them.
I'd
Yeah.
be delighted to.
Yeah.
Go
Let's
for
get to
it.
it then. So I guess with the first one, obviously, Dean, first thing you think about is, well, it's a big title, leadership. So how exactly did you get into your leadership role here at Case?
Excellent question. So, in this world, there are people who know exactly what they want to do with their lives. They have a passion. They say, I want to do this, then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And you look at people like that, and I'm certainly not one of them. So I started my career as a regular faculty member, like everybody else, right? So I got my PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford a long time ago, and then I got my first academic job. And in the academic line, you become an assistant professor, and then there is essentially a probationary period, the pre-tenure period, for about 5 to 6 years. And then hopefully you do well. In other words, you do good research, you teach well, you serve your community well, and eventually you get promoted to the next rank of associate professor. And that's the time when they typically make a decision of whether to give you tenure or not, which is essentially making your job permanent.
Okay.
And then once you become that, you become associate professor with tenure. Then after a while, you maybe 4 or 5 years, then you become a full professor. And that's pretty much the profile of a researcher, a traditional research teaching faculty member, a tenure track faculty member. So my first job was at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. So I was in electrical engineering, the electrical engineering department. And I got started as an assistant professor, and I made tenure, and then I became a full professor in about 9 years or so. So I was doing quite well. At that time, I had no intention of being, a leader of any kind. I was certainly committed to the department, but not necessarily in a leadership role. So I never thought that. But then what happens usually is that there are committee meetings and there are meetings, and when people start talking, and if you have strong opinions, you voice them, right? So there was something going on about graduate admissions, and I spoke up and I said, "Oh no, we should do it this way." And next thing I know, somebody said, "Why don't you do it?" So you become the director of graduate admissions. So
Oh my.
that was the beginning of the end. Speak, and then you all of a sudden you have a new job.
Yep.
So I became the director of graduate admissions, and that lasted for only a year. And before I knew it, I was all of a sudden assistant head of the department, and before I knew it, I was associate head of the department. So you could argue that I certainly enjoyed doing them, and I must have done a fair job of it. And so, or maybe nobody else wanted to do it. It's one of the two. So I ended up in these positions, and then after that, I became the associate dean for research, which is a much higher level position because Purdue is a large engineering program. It's the second largest in the country, I think. So those jobs become very meaty and very big right away. And so I was associate dean for a couple of years, and then the head of the department of electrical and computer engineering position opened up. Head of the department position opened up, and then everything else was sort of more like an internal sort of a search. But that is a nationally competed job. By that time, I had decided this was something I enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And so I actually threw my hat in the ring, and there was a national search, and then eventually I got picked as the internal candidate, and so it worked out. So I was at Purdue University for about 9 years in that role as head of electrical computer engineering. And then at some point, that job kind of became fairly, well worn, so to speak. It was not routine, but I had done the same thing year after year. And then when Case Western Reserve University was looking for a leader of engineering, dean of engineering, which is the next level position, I visited. I really loved the place, and I decided, well, okay, this is the time for me to move, and I moved, and that's how I ended up here. So in some sense, you could say, of course, I had to apply. It was not like somebody said, "Oh, come and please be the dean." So you have to kind of. So eventually, you could argue that I started without a clear idea. That's what I wanted to do. I kind of slowly got sucked into it, and then eventually felt like I enjoyed it, and then ended up in this position. So that's the story. So I can't say 25 or 28 years ago that I started out by saying I shall be this one day. That never happened.
Yeah.
But So that's okay too. I think in life, quite often you never know what you want, and then you kind of find your passion and your love as you go along, and eventually, hopefully, you find happiness and a job.
Yeah. Those are both very important
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
absolutely.